What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of At a Glance, this series in which I give you an appetizer, sampler, glimpse into a particular faction in 40k. And the goal behind it is to help you decide if you want to look further into the Force on your own, or maybe even start collecting that Force as well. So up on the chopping block this time, by viewer request, is the Space Marine Loyalist successor chapter of the Ultramarines, the Scythes of the Emperor. Now, the Scythes of the Emperor are a pretty cool chapter. Visually, they might be a little bit intimidating to people if they're looking to paint them, but it really isn't that bad. So getting into it, let's look at their color scheme. Their color scheme is yellow for their backpack and their torso. Now, there is some art where only the upper half of their torso is yellow, but classically, traditionally, and officially it's the full yellow torso and backpack, as well as the chest emblem. The rest is black. Black helmet, black arms, black shoulder pads, black legs, black weapons, red helmet lenses, white squad markings. All of which is all well and good. What is a little bit of a monkey wrench is their symbol. Not because it's a monkey wrench, but because it's yellow and it's yellow cross sights. Now, I like sights. They look cool to me, so I like their symbol. Problem is, their symbol is yellow, like I said, on a black background. That's difficult to freehand even if you're a good freehander, and since there's no official decals, you kind of have to use fan-made decals, which do exist and do a good job, but you have to do a little bit of extra work. Now, the nice thing about the fan-made decals I've seen is that they have a thick black like border, or a thick black like borderish background around the yellow scythes, so you could make use of white decal paper if you wanted to, or even with clear decal paper you can paint the shoulder pad white so the yellow shows up, because yellow is going to be very transparent when you print it on clear decal paper. Put the clear decal, or the yellow, the clear decal you used, or the clear decal paper that you used, over the white shoulder pad. The yellow will show up nicely. Then you clean up the shoulder pad in black, right up to the black borders. All is well and good. With the white decal paper, you can put it onto a black shoulder pad, and then be all well and good, because the white is going to be the decal paper itself, so the yellow is going to show up very brightly. And since it's got a thick black border, you can cut right up to and slightly into that black border, so there's no white showing to touch up, and again, all well and good, just a little bit of extra work. Once you seal it in matte varnish, everything should kind of blend together and look fine. So you have that as an idea, for sure. So with that existing, getting the full look, symbol and all, for the Scythes of the Emperor isn't truly that bad. It just takes a little bit of extra work in the form of printing your own decals. So that's their visuals. When it comes to their founding, it's a chapter that's kind of been retconned a bit. They used to be listed as in the 25th founding. Now they're listed as 3rd founding because of a short story that came out in December. Basically, the Ultramarines, when the 2nd founding first happened, the Ultramarines had a phantom company, an unofficial company of Ultramarines, giving their total size 11 companies, which is a no-no, but the Primarch nevertheless did that. This company is known as the, or was known as the Aegida Company, A-E-G-I-D-A, that gained an honor emblem of the twin cross scythes for defending a world, or the farmers of the world, Sotha, from the Night Lords. They got this symbol from the Primarch as an honor marking. This was the Phantom Company that existed for whatever reason. And with that said, when 3rd founding came around, there was one surviving member of this Phantom Company. And rather than just killing them off, because the Ultramarines don't do that to their own number, really, they gave him a choice: be absorbed by 5th Company and be a part of 5th Company, or take some members of the Ultramarines veterans and some chaplain and some equipment and so forth, and start a new chapter, a successor to the Ultramarines in the 3rd founding. And he ultimately agreed reluctantly to found a new chapter, calling it the Scythes of the Emperor. That's how we got them from the 3rd founding now. That's basically how it is thus far. Not the biggest thing for Ultramarine diehard fans to like, but nevertheless it is so. So that's how we have the Scythes of the Emperor founding-wise. In terms of activity, they're pretty active. They fought against all manner of enemies of the Imperium. They were part of the Corinth Crusade and the Damocles Gulf Crusade. And they fought against orcs, Tau, everything, you name it. They cut their teeth on the Tyranids, you could say, and that's what they're most famously known for, is Tyranid fighting. That's because their homeworld, Sotha, was devoured by the Tyranids. And the chapter barely managed to get off planet and escape the devouring of their homeworld to live to fight another day. They were really heavily mauled, crippled, you could say, in size, and lost a lot of their equipment. But they nevertheless pressed on and continued the fight, doing a lot of hit and run style of fighting against the Tyranid high fleet of Kraken. Basically, look at how the Crimson Fists are fluff-wise against orcs, and that's how the Scythes of the Emperor are fluff-wise against Tyranids. They become experts at fighting Tyranids, the Scythes of the Emperor. You could say that they might be the premier force in the Imperium for fighting Tyranids, given their need to do so to survive. So that's a very real possibility. There's a lot of parallels with the Scythes of the Emperor and the Crimson Fists. The big differences are two different chapters, obviously. They're successors of two different parent chapters, but the idea of rebuilding, seeking vengeance upon, and being experts against a particular Xenos force runs parallel. So what we have in the timeline of 40k is the Scythes of the Emperor at the very end of the 41st millennium basically emerged from the shadow of High Fleet Kraken and vowed that the chapter would be born anew, basically rebuilt, and it's understood that the Scythes of the Emperor are currently rebuilding their force, attempting to rebuild their chapter and seek vengeance upon Tyranids as a whole. So they have a burning desire to crush all Tyranids, and they're rebuilding to do just that. But as it stands, their force is pretty crippled. Disposition-wise, they only have a handful of Terminator armored suits, 3 or 4 of them, officially in their fluff at the time before starting to rebuild or as of rebuilding. They don't really have any Land Raiders. They only have Rhino-sized vehicle chassis. Who knows if they have Centurion armor or Land Speeders or what have you. They're very beaten and battered. But they are rebuilding, and a lot of that can be rebuilt, and they can even eventually get their hands on more Terminator armor, if you think about it. So technically you could have a Terminator force but in your army, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The point is, as of the end of the timeline in 40k thus far, the Scythes of the Emperor are alive and rebuilding. And I like that, because when a force is listed as officially destroyed, I lose interest in that force to look into it or maybe do a fun model of it. I kind of lose interest. So the Scythes of the Emperor for a long time were thought to be going down that route as kind of like a noble sacrifice in a time of war. But it looks like they've gone the Crimson Fist route instead and are now rebuilding to seek vengeance upon Tyranids. So that's pretty cool. So with that said, their battle tactics obviously are going to be based heavily around the equipment they have available to them, but they are Ultramarines in Successor, and they don't really feel to be too divergent from them aside from being really expert at fighting Tyranids, but wouldn't you know it, so are the Ultramarines. So you could probably play them very Ultramarine-like, which is very open-ended, jack of all trades, suiting a lot of different play styles, keeping in mind their limitations in their equipment, if you wish to. You don't necessarily have to. I wouldn't call you out on it, but if you want to be really fluffy, that's what you would pay attention to. So really an open-ended chapter in terms of play style. So with that said, when it comes to collecting them army list-wise, I feel there's no need to look further than the regular Space Marine Codex. Make use of the regular Space Marine Codex with the Ultramarines chapter tactics and you'll be just fine. Whatever supplement book you want to make use of with the Ultramarines chapter tactics, go for it if you really wish to, but there's no need to really look at any of them if you don't want to. If you want to put any self-imposed limitations on your force, I would stay away from Terminator squads, maybe a Terminator HQ, but I would stay away from Terminator squads if, you want to really embrace that starting to rebuild feel. And maybe stay away from Land Raiders or stay away from any type of exotic gear that Space Marines have. Keeping it pretty basic in that regard, and you got the essence of the Scythes of the Emperor going for you. But it's not an absolute necessity because they are rebuilding, so who knows what they got in their arsenal nowadays, you could say. Anyways, when it comes to actually collecting them physically, there's nothing really specifically for them. There's plenty of bits and kits from Forge and GW for Space Marines, as we know, so there's plenty of variation and plenty of interesting ways you can convert up a Scythes of the Emperor force. With Tyranid bits being out there, you could even give them trophies and basing. You could base them in a way to have Tyranid, dead on there, representing their Tyranid hunting. to kind of add more pizzazz to your force. Now, one thing really of note is Forge World's Death Guard, Death Shroud power scythes. The power scythes are meant to be for the Death Guard of the Horus Heresy, but they're useful for both Terminator armor and power armor. Now, I mentioned that you don't really want to have any Terminator armor squads if you want to be really fluffy, but it doesn't mean you can't have a Terminator captain or something like that, right? So there is the potential there to have some Terminator stuff going on if you so desire. And that's pretty cool. In the form of power scythes, because you could have a Terminator Librarian with a Force Scythe. You could have a Terminator Captain with a Power Scythe, or a Relic Blade Scythe, or what have you. But it also works out, what really makes this thing cool is it works out for power armor as well. So you can go ahead and make use of it on power armor for your sergeants, or your Captain, or Librarian, or what have you, in power armor, artificer armor, or whatever. It comes with arm bits to do the two-handed sights, because there are 3 two-handed sights and 2 one-handed sights. So depending upon what you're doing, you know, what sight you're using for whatever reason, you have the stuff in this little bit kit to build it. So it comes with the arms to do the two-handed sight, I should say, and it comes with some extra arm bits to kind of complement the one-handed sights should you so desire. So that's cool. I like when they do that. Again, this isn't meant to be theirs, but it's a Death Guard thing, and it's very fitting for the size of the Emperor. If I were collecting the size of the Emperor, I'd want some sights in my force, and here's the ability to do so, should you so desire, and I like that a lot. Outside of that, anything really Space Marine bit and kit wise you can use, as long as it's generic enough where it doesn't have any actual chapter symbols on it that don't line up with scythes. So yeah, pretty standard stuff for collecting any type of Space Marine force, with the added bonus of these power scythes of the Death Guard. So whether or not you use Terminators, you have access to scythes for all different infantry, so that's nice. Now, outside of that, when it comes to painting them up, keeping in mind their hit-and-run style, how they were basically fighting a hit-and-run ragtag war of survival, if you're somebody who's a fan of heavy weathering, the Scythes of the Emperor got your back. And this can be a nice, convenient way for you to hide any yellow problems in terms of painting. Because yellow, people get concerned about. I find yellow difficult myself. And whenever you have the capability of hiding blemishes or imperfection in your yellow painting, and not having to worry about it being perfectly pristine because of heavy weathering and so forth, that the Scythe of the Emperor would have access to, or not access, would have as perhaps part of their look for sure, is helpful, and you have that here. So if you like heavy weathering, or if you're worried about hiding any problems in painting yellow, Scythe of the Emperor are very lenient in that regard, because you can do that. So that's pretty cool. And with that said, that's basically it for the Scythe of the Emperor. I know I kind of went all over the place and kind of ran through it, but this isn't at a glance, and we just wanted to glimpse the key important facts here. So thanks for sticking through it. A pretty cool chapter that I think people might enjoy. It's a cool look. If you like the vibe of killing Tyranids left and right, you like the Ultramarine chapter tactic playstyle, but maybe you don't want to paint up blue Marines, that's not your shtick, well, the black and yellow of Scythe of the Emperor may be the way to go. Anyways, that's it. So thanks for sticking through it. Any question, comments, or requests, leave it in the comment section. And until next time, take it easy.